Hello and welcome to Big Jim Gaming. Franchises are all around us. Publishers, developers, they love them because once you get a really good IP, it's basically like writing a blank check. Look at the success of the Marvel franchise right now. But it's good for us too as consumers because once you find something that you really like, human nature says you want more of it. Well, a good franchise gives you just that. More of the good stuff that you want. Now, I do have an upcoming video of the perfect game franchises. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that one. But today, I want to talk about those ones that are very near perfect. Those gaming franchises which are really good with one little blip. Now, for my list, just to let you know, I have limited this to where there's at least 3 games because I don't think you can call it a franchise unless you've got 3 games as a minimum. Obviously, we are going to have different opinions. That's good. Type in the comments below. Let me know what you think at the end of the video. And to begin, one of my favourite franchises of all time, Tomb Raider. The blip in this one, Angel of Darkness. Now, Tomb Raider on the PS1 was phenomenal. It was groundbreaking. It brought us Lara Croft, still one of the longest lasting video game pop culture icons today. She's loved around the world, her games are as well. But this one had a bit of a problem. You see, after 5 very successful outings on the PlayStation 1, the first outing on the PlayStation 2, they decided to mix things up a bit too much. For starters, they took away the tombs from Tomb Raider. That was always going to work, wasn't it? Also, the controls were a nightmare. They actually were worse and more difficult to use than the original controls on the PlayStation 1. It wasn't actually a terrible idea, as in the story was quite good. It was just hard work getting through it. You had to be a real fan to go through this game. I did. I don't think it deserves all the hate it gets, but it's definitely a blip. Thankfully, after this, we got the Legend trilogy, which was awesome. And then after that, the latest 3 games, the Survive trilogy, which I think are the best Tomb Raider games so far. So this little blip will let Lara off. Mafia 3. I'm really looking forward to the upcoming Mafia 4. We haven't got a release date yet. It'll be soon, I'm sure. Mafia 1 and 2 started off as GTA clones. They came out, or at least the first one did, when GTA 3 was there and it was set in the gaming world on fire. And they were brilliant. They managed to take the GTA formula but make it into their own thing. They're actually a triumph in gaming. Fantastic storylines. They remastered all 3 of them and brought them out as a collection on the PlayStation 4. I think it was only a year or so ago. And that just shows how good they are to deserve that treatment. The problem is Mafia 3. Now, they have a fantastic concept here with a Vietnam veteran coming back and getting into a life of crime. I won't spoil the story for you, but it's actually really engaging and is by far the best thing about the game. The downside is the actual game itself is boring. They had a fantastic concept, a great story, but they just made the gameplay so repetitive. After 2 or 3 hours, you feel like you've done everything. And you have. You just need to keep repeating it to advance the story. The story is great, and if you can stay with it, please do, because the story is awesome and you will want to see it through to the end. And I'm not saying that the gameplay is bad. It's not, at all. It's just the same thing, over and over and over. I feel that they worked so hard on all the other elements, and the story itself, and the graphics are fantastic as well, they actually forgot to put any depth into the physical gameplay to help you advance the story, because it was so good, they thought that would be enough. And it just isn't. It's a boring game, which is so close to being good, it just fell over at the last hurdle. Although I'm sure Mafia 4 will be a return to form. Far Cry 6. I love the Far Cry franchise. I've played every single one, apart from the first, because it was only released on PC. And I loved them all. Obviously, Far Cry 3 is quite infamous for being awesome, and it deserves that. You also had some spin-offs such as Far Cry Primal and Blood Dragon, again, awesome. And Far Cry 5, I thought was an absolute triumph. They managed to refresh it just enough to make it feel a little bit more relevant and improved, yet keep everything that we loved about Far Cry. And New Dawn was just as good as well, carrying on the story from Far Cry 5. But then we had Far Cry 6. And it's just dull. The characters just aren't enough to make you care about them. They're just not deep enough. This might just be me. Maybe it's a bit of franchise fatigue. I don't know. I could not get invested in these characters. And the gameplay itself was so rinse-repeat. The environments were all very samey as well. There wasn't any difference there. Even the NCPs you met weren't that entertaining. It was a game, technically, on paper, very good. But it had no heart. It has no soul. And that's why it's dull. And a blip. I just hope that it is only a blip, we get a Far Cry 7, and that it returns to form. Assassin's Creed 3. Ezio Auditore Firenze was always going to be a hard act to follow. He probably still is the most loved assassin in the series. And to start with, we got Haytham Kenway. By the way, spoiler alert. And for the first hour or so, he's an alright character. You find yourself growing towards him. And then there's a twist. He's a Templar. Uh-oh. And we changed from playing as Haytham to Connor. Yeah. And I genuinely think that I could find a wet blanket with more personality than this guy. He is just not likeable. You find yourself playing with him, but you don't want him to win. The best thing I can say about Assassin's Creed 3 is, one, they updated the combat with the blocking mechanics, and that actually works really well. And two, the modern day story puts an end to Desmond Miles's storyline. And I actually found the modern day story far more engaging than the assassin part. It's the only Assassin's Creed game where I rushed through being an assassin because the modern day part was all I was playing for. Thankfully, they more than picked things up with Black Flag. Now, I appreciate Assassin's Creed is quite a big franchise, and you might have a different opinion on what is the worst game in there. Type in the comments, let me know. Battlefield 2042. What hasn't already been said about this? It was launched before it was ready, so it was a glitchy, buggy, unplayable mess. Yes, they've patched it, and it's a lot better than it used to be, but I just don't understand. What makes a game developer think they can get away with launching a game which isn't ready, which isn't finished? And why? Why not just wait? Seriously. You launched this broken game, you charged full price for it, and you upset your player base. And yes, you did fix it, but by then, a lot of us had moved on. If you'd have just waited until it was ready rather than being greedy to get the revenue as fast as you can, that wouldn't have happened. And it'd probably be a longer lasting success than it's proven to be. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Now, this is a franchise that's got, well, let's just say more than one blip. But I've got a lot of nostalgia towards Sonic, a lot of affection towards the franchise, as it was the first game I ever played on my Sega Mega Drive. And I like most of them. But even I cannot escape the awfulness of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. For starters, it's a really poor attempt at copying Final Fantasy. The plot sucks, the story sucks, the gameplay isn't great. You should have done your own thing like you've always done. But you didn't. It's glitchy and it's buggy, and this is before you could actually get patches on games later on, so the finished product on the disc is what you had and that was it, like it or lump it. And finally, the biggest sin of all. You took Sonic the Hedgehog, this very cute blue creature, this mascot for Sega, this icon aimed towards children, and gave him a human love interest, and they kissed. And that was icky.
We won't be having any...
You brought bestiality into Sonic. Ugh. And finally, this is a strange one, because it's actually only half of the game which needs to go in the sim bin. I'm talking about Final Fantasy XIII. You see, the first 15 hours, well, 12 to 15 hours, are boring as anything. You're basically playing on a long corridor. It's completely linear, the environment gets very boring very fast, you're playing against enemies to get past it. 2 or 3 hours, especially when you're new to the game, getting used to it, getting acquainted with the characters and things, yeah, you can get away with that. But not a dozen plus. It's dull. It's boring. And unnecessary. Because the second half of the game is awesome. Really good fun. Also, Final Fantasy XIII 2, really good. As is the third one, Lightning Returns. In fact, it's actually the best. So, it didn't need to be on this list. It didn't need to have a sucky start. Because if the second half is brilliant, there's no reason that couldn't have been replicated with the first. I don't know what the developers were aiming for here, but it was definitely a swing and a miss. Now, you might think there's other entries in the series which are worse. But just bear in mind, it's been going on since the early 90s. So, Final Fantasy 1 and 2, if you played it today versus 13, yeah, they're not as good. But back when they came out, they were at the forefront of RPGs. They were amazing. So just bear that in mind. You've got to take each one with the time it came out. And to me, a great game with 12 hours plus of boredom to begin with, so only the hardcore fans actually get to see the good part, not good enough. And that is my little tongue-in-cheek list of the gaming franchises that are nearly perfect with one little blip. But what do you think? I'm sure you've got games in franchises that you think are worse. Maybe you think the ones I've chosen are all absolutely fantastic games. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you think is a perfect franchise with just one bad game. Until next time, watch this space. I'll see you soon.